Manga House 1964 119. This was released before Archie's TV Laugh-Out 74. Harvey asks Hilda what bubbles forth from yon beaker, having a very stilted line he won't say. She says she can't tell him because it's a secret formula. So I guess she only told him it was a potion to mess with him after changing her mind about not telling him the truth. Harvey thinks she has a good sense of humor as the mere presence of the potion shapeshifts his head. I guess she intentionally made it that way so that happened to mess with him and Sabrina. He'd immediately notice the change because he'd be able to see his longer nose. Or snout. Little Archie issue 165. The Magic Skates. Somehow Sabrina's not out skating with her friends because she can't find her skates when she should have immediately thought to summon skates to her by force of habit. Instead, Zelda does that for her. And for no reason, the skates can obnoxiously talk in slang, making it even more annoying that this happening wasn't justified. For no reason, Sabrina doesn't immediately use magic to make the skates unable to talk to avoid them annoying or distracting her and making her friends question why she got talking skates, and then ask Zelda why she made the skates able to talk and summon skates that can't. Instead, she says the skates are fast, and Veronica says that's a neat trick, and Betty says she skates like magic. So Reggie gets suspicious and wants to take a closer look at the skates. If he was smart, he'd wait until she took them off and then try to examine them when she's not there. Jughead suggests going to the chocolate shop for a burger, and Sabrina politely says that's a great idea. I really don't see what makes Sabrina a better skater. She seems to be skating normally most of the time. The left skate insults Pop-Tate's weight, and Sabrina's told that she has to take her skates off to go inside. When the kids don't want to go inside because that'd be work, surprisingly, Pop-Tate's smart enough to say that he's giving out free scoops of ice cream to convince them to take off the skates and come in. Reggie says out loud right beside Sabrina that he's got a chance to try Sabrina's skates on. And yet Sabrina doesn't immediately turn around and stop him. And after the skates call out that they're being kidnapped, Sabrina just asks if they hear voices, which is hopefully just to try to make them think the voices aren't from the skates, because she should have heard everything he was doing. Sabrina tells Reggie to give them back, and he says he was only trying to do a few tricks. The skates call him a jerk and intentionally make him slip, hit his head, and get hurt a few more times. Jughead and Archie somehow don't question how this is happening if they actually think Reggie is doing a trick here. Sabrina asks Reggie if he wants any ice cream as he's crawling away, but somehow he doesn't want free ice cream to make him feel better. And somehow the skates want some fresh air because they were on Reggie's feet, even though they didn't act like this after Sabrina took them off. I guess the idea is that Reggie has slightly bigger feet, leaving them no room to breathe. This confusing story only happened because for no reason Sabrina didn't summon her skates to her when she couldn't find them. So Zelda summons skates that talk for no reason, even though she knows Sabrina should be going out to skate with her friends. Conveniently, the skates don't talk around her friends until after Reggie tries them on and provokes them. It was another story that shouldn't have happened, and had Sabrina somehow forget her full capabilities as a witch and need her aunts to use magic for her, making this a franchise's original sin because it happened before the animated series, but was forgivable in this comic because this is rare, and she's still about as competent and impulsive with magic as you'd expect most of the time, and barely ever gets scolded for using it. Little Archie issue 166. Those Charming Ways. Sabrina tells Betty in cooking class that her cake smells great, and Betty thanks her. Despite the fact that Veronica should know that she's the only one Archie's actually interested in, she somehow feels threatened by Betty wanting to bake Archie a cake, and says that the only thing he's going to be eating are her cookies. And if her cookies suck, then that won't be right of her. Betty sings Archie happy birthday as an excuse for why she's giving him a cake, and Veronica screams at Archie that she has to eat her cookies now. Sadly, Archie says he'd rather have cookies instead of at least telling Betty he wants to eat the cake later. He could whisper it. Sabrina tries to help Betty by making Betty's cake grow right in front of her without her freaking out, and causes Veronica's cookies to taste terrible. But they would have anyways. I understand why she wanted to make sure. Veronica's too sensitive and says she's going steady with Reggie because Archie hates her cookies. And surprisingly, Archie is brave enough to remark that that's okay with him, and says that Reggie won't like the cookies either. I thought he'd be desperate for her not to leave him. So because he talked back, she throws the hard cookies at him like an abuser. And shockingly, Betty laughs instead of feeling sorry for someone she's supposed to love. It's like she only likes him in the sense that she likes his looks and wants to be able to say he's hers. Sabrina says now there's no one to eat her cake instead of using magic to make Archie eat it anyways. The cake's gone because it was Weatherby's birthday and that was his excuse for stealing the cake without anyone telling him to eat it. It feels like a downer ending because Betty didn't get Archie to eat her cake, which could have easily happened. But at least Weatherby got to, and Veronica got mad at Archie, which made Betty really happy. It's sad that he says it's nice to know someone knew it was his birthday, because as far as we know, no one knows. This story has Betty wants to get Archie to eat her cake to become number one with him. But somehow Veronica feels threatened by Betty, even at this point, where he only cares about Veronica. So she demands him to eat her cookies and ignore the cake, when clearly the right thing to do would be to let him enjoy the cake too, and act like she trusts him to stay faithful to her. It never matters how many favors Betty does for him. Although it would be justified for Archie to leave her over Betty's cake because of how Veronica tends to mistreat him. But if he was just waiting for an excuse, he would have found one already. Sabrina makes Veronica's cookies taste terrible just in case, and gets Archie in trouble with Veronica, which cheers up Betty. But Archie doesn't get to eat the cake anyways, because Weatherby sealed it for his birthday. So Sabrina using magic on the cake was completely pointless for Betty and just wasted our time. Even if it was still good by giving someone more cake to enjoy. It seems like a downer ending because Betty didn't get what she wanted, even though Sabrina could easily brainwash Archie into it. Little Archie, issue 167, Saved with Flowers. Grundy talks to a flower hoping that it's ready for the big show. Grundy says that flowers can listen to you, which is an odd way of phrasing it. I thought she'd keep it simple and say that flowers grow better when they hear people talking. Apparently there's a student-teacher flowers show in the school. I never had that in my school. Sabrina thinks she didn't plant anything for it and decides that this is going to take a little magic. I assume this means that all the students were forced to participate. Or she's just that desperate to win the prize. But we should really be told what the prize is to explain why she wants it so badly that she thinks cheating for it and depriving other people of it is worth it, when she could just zap the prize up. Of course her zapping up a huge flower is unfair to the other students. But there's something liberating about the fact that no one calls her out on it and she's fine with using it. It makes her relatable and realistic that she's not too much of a goody two-shoes to do this. What's the point of a character being a witch if she's not going to take advantage of it? She also dates the comic by saying bright and gay in her spell before Weatherby jumps at seeing the flowers in front of him. Jughead has a good point when he says about the flower show, why don't they have a vegetable show? Flowers can't do anything. Well, potatoes make french fries. Then there's onion rings and hot buttered popcorn. And that explains why he's defending vegetables. So that's smart of him. It's also smart of him to say, I suppose you have a magic flower, Sabrina? I love that even Jughead's saying this, not just Reggie. It also puts his hands on its hips and smiles. It's being obvious. He jokes around asking if it's gonna pull a sundae out of its stem. Sabrina makes that happen so we can enjoy it. Which makes sense because she wants to do a good deed. But she should have used magic to make him not remember where that sundae came from, so he won't tell anyone about it. To be fair, realistically, Weatherby doesn't believe him about it. Although considering all the crazy things he saw because of Sabrina, there's a reason I assumed he would believe him. He sees the flowers sing and play rock music. Sabrina must have only made it like that because she thought it'd be fun. And she's overconfident that she'll never be exposed as a witch to most people. Which makes sense when you think about it because witches can erase memories and nobody believes people about magical events. It's still shocking that she casually admits that Weatherby did see the flower play rock music and ask him what kind of sundae he wants. It cuts ahead in time to him giving Sabrina the first prize, and Grundy doesn't get it even though it's huge. The story ends with Weatherby eating a pizza pie because of the flower. It's confusing how she doesn't even try to hide how supernatural the flower is. But that would severely limit the story potential. It would be really boring if it was just a normal flower. This story is about Sabrina creating a magic flower for the flower contest that's confusingly taking place at her school. It's confusing that she makes the flower more supernatural than it has to be instead of just making it a big flower. I have to assume it's because she'd find that more entertaining. And for once the story taking advantage of her being younger. Because she's probably being this reckless because she's a naive kid. And since witches can erase memories and nobody believes anyone about magical things, then no wonder she's fine with getting the flower to give people sundaes. Which made it all worth it because she made people happy. But she didn't deserve to win the flower contest because she didn't go through the hard work of growing the plant. And just bribed the judge with a sundae. He knows it's a strange talented flower, he has to know that it's magical. But he conveniently doesn't accuse her of creating it. I guess he assumes that she found it. And anyone can find it. It's like he has an instinct to mind his own business because he'd face the consequences otherwise. Little Archie, issue 168. Whether or not. Sabrina wants to plan a picnic with her friends on Saturday. And Zelda says in front of all Sabrina's friends that she'll make sure it doesn't rain on their picnic. Somehow Sabrina asks Zelda what now, when it should be obvious. On the day of the picnic, surprisingly Zelda wasn't even subtle about her magic, because she makes it so that it rains everywhere except over Sabrina and her friends. Some kids notice that it's not raining over Sabrina and her friends. They run over to her picnic along with Weatherby, and Sabrina offers them a sandwich reluctantly. Reggie complains that it's getting crowded and they don't have enough food for themselves. But fortunately, Zelda was actually smart enough to spy on their picnic with a crystal ball to make sure they would have fun, instead of assuming it'll all be fine. Hilda says they should change the weather, but somehow decides that making it freezing and snowy is a good idea. I guess she just did it as a prank. Zelda fortunately calls out Hilda on this and changes the weather to sunny, but for no reason. This doesn't involve the snow instantly vanishing, leaving no water behind, with nobody remembering what Hilda did. Instead, the kids are confused, and Sabrina goes home mad at her aunts and tells them that her friends want to finish the picnic at the chocolate shop. At least they want to finish it. I thought they'd give up. Although it's not a picnic if it's at the chocolate shop, so they might as well have given up. Hilda decides to go where her talent is appreciated, and warps to the annual Weatherman's picnic to eat food. And apparently any kind of weather goes here. Huh? In this story, it rains when Sabrina wants a picnic with her friends, but for no reason, instead of Zelda simply making sure it'll be sunny from the start of that day to the end, which I thought would happen, she does something that'll obviously attract suspicion. She makes it rain everywhere except where Sabrina and her friends are. This only causes people to run over to where they are and ruin their picnic. But Zelda was spying on it. But so is Hilda, so she unfortunately takes this as a lame excuse to torment them with snow, even though Sabrina's among them. And Zelda makes it sunny, but by this point they're all freaked out and think the weather's gone crazy. Sabrina at least calls her aunts out on this. And fortunately, her friends decided to continue the picnic at Pop-Teats, even if that isn't where a picnic should be, so it's still sad. But Sabrina could easily have the picnic she wanted if she simply erased their memories of what Zelda and Hilda did, warped back to her house with the food of the picnic restored, but made sure that it was sunny this time. Which is what she should have done in the first place. She didn't need Zelda to do the magic for her. It is easy to accept that the ants are quicker to use magic because you can tell by the witch costumes that they're far more focused on the old way of doing things. They're set in their ways. And hundreds of years ago, people treated weird people worse, so they felt isolated, which encouraged them to use magic more and be more witch-like. While Sabrina is the new generation where people are more open-minded, so it makes sense that she wouldn't use magic at every opportunity because she'd care that she freaks people out. I like it better when it's Sabrina's idea to not use magic. Little Archie, issue 169, The Magic Treat. Veronica's having a party, and while she's inviting Archie, she's not inviting Jughead because he makes a pig of himself at every party. Archie's upset, and he's told that Jughead tends to eat all of the food before anyone gets a chance. Then he shouldn't be invited to any of them, sadly. Jughead knows about the party, unfortunately, when he could have easily not, and he's told the bad news. He can't even eat at Pop-Teats because he hasn't paid last month's bill yet. I'd expect any restaurant to force you to pay right away, It's an ice cream parlor. It's not like a bar with a bar tab. Maybe Pop-Tates is based off the bar tab idea and not reality. Out of nowhere, Jughead wishes he'd never eat again, and somehow, Sabrina thinks it's a good idea to grant his wish, like you'd expect an evil genie to, instead of simply making it so that he's only got a normal appetite. Obviously, if he never feels hungry, it'll be much harder for him to motivate himself to eat. But of course, if his parents are good parents, they'll successfully get him to eat regardless, threatening to punish him. Archie says it's not the same in Pop-Tates without Jughead. Surprisingly, another kid says they should try eating at the place down the street. This shouldn't convince Pop-Tate to forgive a customer who doesn't pay very much. It's just 2 lost customers. Most people shouldn't care whether Jughead's there or not, because his only personality is that he's got too much of an appetite. At lunch, Jughead's in the classroom because he's not hungry, and Grundy hates the soup because Jughead used to test it for Miss Beasley and doesn't anymore. But you'd think she'd still remember how to make soup right. And if Jughead doesn't show up to do it, she's fully capable of testing it herself. Does she have terrible taste in good food? And why would the chocolate shop be completely empty just because Jughead's not there? This is completely unrealistic. Somehow, none of the boys showed up to Veronica's party because Archie said all the guys wanted to be with Jughead. Apparently Archie's attraction to Veronica isn't stronger than his preference for Jughead, who treats him right. The next day, Sabrina sees 3 different people begging Jughead to be how he was before, and she returns them to normal. Why did the first panel even have these weird yellow aliens in it if they only show up in the story by the end and were never necessary? Sabrina's always able to grant wishes. This story was less sad than you'd expect for a story where someone's made to permanently lose their appetite by Sabrina. For all we know, he was still eating when his parents told him to. The story forces things to go back to normal by really stretching for excuses for why people want him to keep his appetite. There's no reason that one-dimensional kid no longer attending Pop-Tate's store would result in the store always being empty. Wouldn't people be eating there because they like its food more than the food of other places, and because it's a familiar place? I can believe Archie trying to eat at other places because he misses Jughead, but why would a malt shop be completely empty just because 2 boys stopped showing up? Or did he overreact to it being empty one time? It's also hard to believe that Archie won't show up at Veronica's party, because Veronica's his girlfriend and he doesn't want to make her mad, which is easy to do. And he goes on dates with her all the time without Jughead.